Hello, everybody. Welcome to our review of Birds of Prey and the Fantabulous Emancipation of one Harley Quinn. Yes, I'm saying the whole name.
Oh, we're going to say the whole name the whole time, and we are coming to you live this morning, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes.
Because that is how important we think Birds of Prey and the Fantabulous Emancipation of one Harley Quinn is to you and to us. That is what we have deemed it to be.
Yes. I'm Dan Murrell.
I'm Roth Cornet, and we are here to talk to you about this film. Dan, would you call this a highly anticipated DC offering?
Yeah, I'm sure by many. I mean, it's certainly not at the Batman v Superman levels, just because Birds of Prey, by its nature, is a little bit lesser known of a property in the DC universe. However, Harley Quinn, this is really Harley Quinn's movie.
Yes,
is one of the most popular characters in the DC universe. So I think that it's a little bit of a column A and a little bit of column B. I certainly was looking forward to seeing Margot Robbie sort of take the spotlight in this film, and I gotta say, I liked what I saw.
I liked what I saw quite a little bit. I think that, to your point, Dan, one of the things that I noticed that was interesting is that I think some folks might come into this and thinking they might get a Guardians of the Galaxy, where it really is about the relationships being built between these people. In this sense, the relationships being built between the people and the team aspect of it. What's interesting is it's not so much that it's setting up these individual characters, particularly Harley, and there's a team connection at a point, but that's not the thrust of the film.
No, if I was going to compare this to another superhero type film, it would be Deadpool.
Yeah.
In the sense that it's very much Harley telling her own story.
Yeah.
It's very self-aware. It's obviously not quite as meta as Deadpool, but it's got that same vibe, that same
little
feel. But yeah, a little bit. There are a couple literal winks to the camera, etc. That's something I wasn't particularly expecting necessarily, that sort of tone and that sort of vibe from it. But I think it works for this movie, partly again because Margot Robbie is so good as this character, and what we saw developed in Suicide Squad really develops further in this film. And they actually do a lot of good work with Harley. She's not just evil or she's not just quirky. They go into the fact that she's an anti-hero, but they go into the fact that she's a trained psychologist.
Yes.
They go into the fact that, this deep well of betrayal and, as has been set up by the trailer, so it's not really a spoiler, the fact that she's broken up with the Joker. I think that it's not just coasting on the popularity of Harley Quinn.
Yeah.
You really do get to know more about her as a character, which I liked.
I like that as well. And I will say, to your point about the fact that she's a psychologist, it's not sort of just delivered again in exposition, though it's not delivered in exposition. It's utilized as a character trait in a fun way, where she's sort of, they're riffing on how that aspect of her background could help her be even more of a pain in the ass, which I thought was really delightful. And the way that she sort of like gleefully enjoys creating and embracing and literally running head first into mayhem. That's just a part of her nature. She's so id-like. I mean, she's not analyzing herself enough. If I had one complaint, there's not enough self-reflection. As much as she is, she's not. But I think they played well with that, and I think they play well without putting too fine a point on it, and getting sort of proselytizing. I think that they play well with what we know about the toxic nature of the relationship with the Joker. They don't sort of judge Harley for that. They allow her to be in that space of the emotion of it, that it's not sort of like, screw Mr. J, and now I'm emancipated. You think it's that.
Yeah.
When she's saying, I had to lose something I really love, they do a great subversion in the film of what that thing is.
Yes,
and it's a thing I really love, too, if you see the movie.
It looks
awesome. Really awesome.
Yeah, I have to say.
And they do a couple of great subversions in that way. So I think they allow her to be human. They allow her to have been in love with a maniac. And they allow her to have feelings about that. And they allow her to be imperfect in so many ways, but still compelling. The characters, the support cast around her is so strong.
Yes.
I would have liked to see some more of some of them, and I hope we do.
Well, yeah, that would be, I think, the major, and it's I mean, the first Avengers film suffers from the same thing, which is that in introducing the characters and in it's not really about assembling the team. It's much more about Harley, and I actually like the structure in the sense that, like, you'll see something happen, and then they'll rewind and they'll introduce this character. They'll introduce why we're in this situation. I actually liked that. I liked the way that they set that up. The only criticism
so much better
would be
than the way Suicide Squad did it.
Much better. Yes, very much better than the way. I mean, structurally, it plays with.
But it does it well, and it shows you how much of that is purely in the direction.
Yes, and the editing and the writing. Yeah. But the only criticism of that would be that because there's so much of the setup and rewinding to tell you how you got to where you are, it feels a little bit front loaded in the sense that by the time you get to the Birds of Prey section of the film, you're well into Act 3.
Yes.
That's not necessarily a criticism, more of just. I guess kind of a criticism. It feels a little top heavy, but the stuff that's there is so entertaining, and the climax of the film is still entertaining. I think it's just a structural.
I think it was an issue because for me, I agree with you, and that was probably my major complaint about the film is that a lot of it seems like it's setting you up for this team relationship, but you never really get the team relationship because there's not enough time.
Yeah.
And also, in reality, and this movie touches on this, that team wouldn't stay together very long for a lot of reasons. Harley's a criminal.
Yeah.
And that's who she is. So that's just an inherent problem, but they set them up individually so well.
Right.
And the foil is so great in Ewan McGregor. I mean, he is just chewing the heck out of any scene he's in.
Ewan McGregor.
He doesn't steal the movie, to be clear, but he's great at what he does.
If he weren't surrounded by such a great cast,
he might.
He might very well. But Margot Robbie is so good. And then you mentioned the supporting cast. Rosie Perez, I think, is very good. Mary Elizabeth Winstead.
We don't get enough of her. We don't get enough of Huntress.
She really comes on. She's kind of like the first 2/3 of the movie. I'm like,
Look
she's
how
kind
cool
of
she is, and she's such a nerd.
She's kind of a nothing for the first 2/3. She just kind of pops up here and there, and then when they finally get into who she is and you get to meet her, she is so good. Like, there are so many standouts that Ewan McGregor just ends up being one of them.
Yes.
But he is hilarious in this movie. I do think sometimes my spidey sense, not to mix franchises too much, starts tingling about what might get people upset. I do think that purists for Black Mask and that character might say, like, what did you do? Because it's a very esoteric. It is a very odd, bizarre. I liked it, but I think some people that are looking for just a straight adaptation of that character, much the same way with the Mandarin in Iron Man 3, people that just wanted a straight adaptation of that character might say, like, that's not the character that I know. I could see people saying that. However, I loved what Ewan McGregor did in this movie.
He's hilarious.
Really funny, and just... He is one of those actors that's just like, when he decides to go for the eccentricities, like, he can. It reminded me of his performance in Fargo when he was playing twins.
Yeah.
Just when he hones in on a character and bores down on these few little things and just goes 1,000% on them, he's so good at that.
What's interesting to me, I agree with you 100%. And also Mary Elizabeth Winstead, a Fargo alum.
That's right.
And we get just a taste of what her Huntress would be just towards the end of the Act 3. And boy, do I want more of that, because man, is it interesting and smart and funny and really rich in just a few moments.
Yeah.
But we have some newcomers also, relative newcomers.
Yeah.
And I think everyone, absolutely, the entire cast is fulfilling what they need to do in order to propel the movie forward and to make you interested in each of these characters on an individual basis.
Yeah.
Of course, it's Harley's movie. Like, it should be Harley's movie. It's the Fantabulous Emancipation of one Harley Quinn. It's in the title.
Yeah.
Subtext and Birds of Prey. But I do wonder what they're going to do next. Like, do you see... We don't have to get into too much of this, but there is some kind of setup for 2 different tracks that we could follow, and I wonder what DC is going to do. They're probably waiting to see what the response is. They're going to see what the box office is. They're going to see what the box office is.
I think that the future, they could really, and I like this move from them, which is that instead of making a movie where they're setting a path that they must follow for 6 or 7 future films, they make this a movie that they wanted to make, and then there are several possibilities from where they can go with here. I like that. I think that that's the way to go. you have, I mean, if you want to make a kick-ass action franchise out of this, you can, because that's another thing is I think there may be 2 to 3 fight scenes too many.
I agree.
However, the only thing that keeps that from being mind-numbing is the fact that the action is done really well.
It is
really well in this movie.
There's a sequence towards the end of Act 1 where Harley has to go collect someone, and I think they could have sliced that in half, and there's a couple of reasons that I won't get into. One of them is that it took me out of the reality too much. She was getting away with just a little too much in the first half of it. And then in the second half, I thought that's where they really could have focused. Okay, now she can be let loose. Because look, she's an anti-hero, so this is what's tricky. She has to fight the good guys that are the, what we consider to be the good guys. But she can only take that so far in order to still remain an anti-hero.
Right.
It's like a really tough needle to thread. So what we really want her to do is fight the bad guys, right?
Yeah.
And they do that very well. But anyway, they got away with something, I thought, a little bit in one portion of the movie. But the action sequences are great. This is a vibrant, funny, fun, colorful, heightened film that is meant to be just to the left of reality. I think it's very much in the nature of Harley Quinn. That's captured really well.
Yeah.
It's tonally appropriate for who she is as a character. It wouldn't be great for every movie.
Captures that R rating. I like that it makes good use of the R rating, but is not gratuitous.
Yeah.
I never found it gratuitous. And there were a couple of spots where it could have gone really far.
Yeah.
Pushed it really far and just said like, well, because we have an R rating, we can do this, but they pulled back a little bit. I think that was the smart move, because it doesn't seem like, oh, well, we're just doing the R rating because we can. It makes sense why the extra violence, the extra language, etc., is there, and I don't think it's pushed too far, so it even stops feeling like it's in universe with this, these other films that we've seen. It does feel like it feels part of the universe, and I think a lot of credit has to go to Cathy Yan.
Yes,
I mean,
the direction.
She I think was the right choice for this. The tone is right. The it looks great. The action's well staged. I was watching some of the scenes and I realized that like the camera wasn't shaking at all. It was very well choreographed and just allowed to unfold. I like there are different settings where they put action scenes. As I said, that's what keeps it interesting. It's not just mindless shooting and punching. It's actually in an interesting setting. So I think a lot of credit has to go to Cathy Yan for really pulling off a lot of different things very well in this movie.
100% agreed, and also capturing the essence of Harley throughout the course of the film, and also allowing these other characters to be rich and dynamic, even when they're given small moments to do so.
Yeah.
She really is, I think, probably a great actor's director in that sense as well.
Yeah.
I will say, too, the other thing that I really appreciated about her direction was, we hinted at this, but there's a couple of moments that are subverting your expectations, but without it feeling manipulated. It actually feels like, no, that really is probably what would happen, because it's setting up a circumstance in which the hero or whoever you're following would easily win a moment, and they don't necessarily, because they wouldn't necessarily. And so I think that's done really well and done very comedically. I also credit a lot Margot Robbie. Pardon me. Have you guys heard people say Robbie? It's Robbie,
I've
right?
heard both.
Yeah, I've heard both.
Yeah.
Anyway, Margot Robbie, really credit her, who was a producer on the film, and I think was very, very active in reality. Sometimes actors get that credit, and it is what it is.
Yeah.
I think in this case, she was very, very much taking ownership of this character, and I like what she's done with it and the team that was assembled around her. So we'll see what happens next.
We will. As far as this movie goes, Birds of Prey and the Fantabulous Emancipation of One Harley Quinn, that's the official title of the movie. As far as this movie goes, I enjoyed it. I'd recommend it. I do think that structurally it is a bit front loaded. You're right. The team stuff does seem sort of tacked on at the end, but everything that comes before it is very entertaining, and it's not like I would cut any of that stuff out. And honestly, given the choice, I'll take an hour and 50-minute long film that feels a bit rushed to the end versus another 2 hour and 45, 2 hour 30-minute film that I'm just sitting there going like, oh my god, when is this going to be over? Because there's been a lot of those lately.
Yeah,
it moves. It's got it a good clip. I think yes, they may sacrifice some things along the way, but at the same time, I think what's there works. So So it's a recommendation for me.
Yeah, it's a big recommendation for me too. I think there's a lot of different ways to view this film. If you're invested in the character, particularly in Harley Quinn, this is a really interesting look at her. I think that it's a fun movie. It's an action movie. It's an entertaining comic book movie. It is what it is. It's a popcorn movie in that sense. However, it's incredibly well directed and written and acted. And I think it does sort of percolate around, and I really hesitate to frame this in a way that sounds like it's going to be heavy-handed. It's not. Mm-hmm. It does percolate around some of the issues that people have had around Harley Quinn in particular, and her relationship with the Joker, and it addresses how different characters, particularly the female characters in DC, have been interpreted and treated in the past. But it never, ever feels, to me, heavy-handed, or that they're sort of messaging at the sacrifice of story and character and entertainment ever, which I think is incredibly impressive, because it leaves you with some things to chew on, but in a very entertaining way.
Yeah, I agree. It is entertainment first and foremost. There's not a lot of times there's these moments, particularly in a lot of the superhero films. There were a few in Dark Phoenix. There's been some in other films that felt like, we have to put this on hold to say something.
Yeah.
I never got that sense.
It's just baked in.
It's baked into the characters. It's baked into their relationships. It's baked into the situations. Again, I think it comes down to good writing.
It comes down to great writing, but also great directing, because even the action, as you say, the reason I think it works is because it is born of character and the circumstance. It's never just an action sequence for its own sake. Nothing is for its own sake. It's with a purpose, and the purpose is story and character. That said, it's baked in, and even with Ewan McGregor, you'll see him throw a fit at one point, and it says a lot with a little.
Yeah.
So big recommendation for me.
Yep. 2 recommendations for Birds of Prey and the Fantabulous Emancipation of one Harley Quinn. It hits theaters here and I think most places this Friday. Let us know what you think down in the comments below once you see it. Do you agree with us? Do you not agree with us? Did you like Harley? Do you like the action? All that fun stuff. Until next time.
Be
I'm
nice
Dan
to
Murrell.
us, Puddin'.
Yeah. Roth Cornet.
What if I called you Puddin'? I feel like
That'd
that's not a good.
odd.
I think it's not good.
I
Let's
don't
not
think
do that. I'm
no.
Roth Cornet. He's Dan Murrell.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.